Uh, Something happened to someone who does not do soft. Someone who has built their entire relationship with the world on a particular kind of hardness. Not cruelty, not necessarily, but the specific density of a person who decided at some point, probably a long time ago, probably for very good reasons that made complete sense at the time, that softness was a liability. That warmth extended freely was warmth that could be used against you. That the safest and most sustainable way to move through a life full of other people was to keep the interior temperature cool, the external presentation controlled, and the distance between what you feel and what you show generous enough to protect whatever lives on the inside. This person has a whole system, a tested, practiced, long running system for not being moved. And then they encountered you. And the system is producing results it has never produced before. I want to stay right here for a moment because this is where the reading actually lives. Not in the cosmic sweep of it, not in the grand energetic narrative of souls and significance and the movement of something vast, in the very specific and very human and very slightly absurd situation of a person who prides themselves on being unmovable, sitting somewhere right now thinking thoughts so soft they would not recognize them as their own if they encountered them outside of themselves. Thoughts about you. Thoughts that have a texture that does not belong to this person's usual interior landscape. Gentle thoughts, the kind with rounded edges. The kind that arrive without agenda, without calculation, without the usual overlay of strategic consideration that accompanies most of what moves through this person's mind. Just soft, just quiet and warm and entirely bewilderingly tender about you. The first image that comes through is one of the most specific things I have seen in any reading. I see armor, not theatrical armor, not the gleaming ceremonial kind that exists to be admired, the functional kind, worn, showing the evidence of actual use, the kind of armor that has been put on every morning for so long that the person wearing it has largely stopped being aware of its weight because the weight has become so habitual it registers as their own body. This armor is doing something unusual right now. In one specific place, it has developed a quality it has never had before, not a crack exactly, not a break, something more subtle, a softening, a slight, almost imperceptible change in the material quality of one small area, as if something in the composition of the armor at that point has shifted from rigid to something slightly more yielding. Not compromised, not weakened in any structural sense, just different in that one specific location from what it has always been. And that location corresponds to exactly where you touched it. Not deliberately, you were not trying to find the weak point, you were not running a strategy. You simply arrived being entirely yourself with that particular quality of genuine presence that you carry without effort or awareness. And somewhere in the interaction, the armor registered something it did not know how to stay hard against. And it has been subtly, privately, inexplicably softer in that spot ever since. Let me tell you what this person's soft thoughts actually look like. Because they are specific, and their specificity is what makes them so disorienting to the person having them. If the thoughts were general, if they were vague warmth directed at a vague you, they would be more manageable, more easily filed, more available to the kind of rationalization that this person is very skilled at applying to things that inconvenience them. But the thoughts are not general. They are about the exact angle of something in your expression when you are not performing for anyone, the precise quality of your voice in a moment of genuine, unguarded feeling. The way you move when you are thinking, that very particular Virgo quality of concentrated, inward facing motion that somehow manages to be both purposeful and entirely unself conscious at the same time. They are thoughts about your hands, about something you said that was ordinary in your own estimation and extraordinary in theirs, about a moment where you were kind in a way that you probably did not flag as particularly notable because kindness of that quality is simply how you operate, but that landed in this person's chest with an impact entirely disproportionate to the apparent size of the gesture. They are thoughts that begin with you and then, before this person notices what is happening, have traveled somewhere much larger, to questions they do not usually ask, to possibilities they do not usually permit, to a version of their life that contains something they have spent a significant amount of energy convincing themselves they do not want. Something soft, something warm, something that looks from inside the private space where these thoughts are happening uncomfortably like the life they actually want rather than the life they have built. I want to speak to the danger in this reading because the title names it and it deserves honest engagement rather than being romanticized into something comfortable. When I say dangerous person, I am not speaking of someone who will harm you. I am speaking of someone whose danger is the kind that comes from depth of character rather than malice. Someone who has lived with intensity, who has navigated things that most people have not navigated, who carries something in them that was forged in conditions that were not gentle and that produced, as a result, a hardness that is real and a complexity that is real and a kind of presence in the world that is not easily categorized or comfortably contained. This person has edges. They are aware of their edges, more aware than most people are of their own, because their edges have been relevant to their survival in ways that made ignorance of them a luxury they could not afford. And they have been protecting you from their edges. This is the soft thought they would be most embarrassed to name. The protective instinct that has been running quietly in the background of however they move in your direction. The awareness that you have a quality about you, not naivety exactly, something more luminous than that, something that exists in you because you have not been required to armor against the specific things they have been required to armor against, and that this quality is something they do not want their edges to touch. They want to be careful with you. The dangerous person wants to be careful with you. Sit with that for a moment. I see a second image, and it makes me pause before I describe it because it is so quietly unexpected. I see large hands, the hands of someone who has used them in ways that required strength and directness and the confident application of force when force was what the situation required, hands that know how to hold things firmly, hands that have not always been gentle, because gentleness was not always what was needed. And these hands are thinking about you. I know that sounds strange, but this is how it comes through. These hands have a quality of restrained gentleness when the thought of you is present, a softness in the way they hold whatever they are holding, as if the thought of you produces in the hands a memory of how they would want to move if you were near carefully, with a precision that has nothing to do with strength and everything to do with the specific and unusual desire to not disturb something they have decided without announcement is precious. You have made this person's hands gentle in their imagination. That is not a small thing for someone whose hands have not often been asked to be gentle. Tell me something in the comments. Is there someone in your life who reads as harder than you? Someone whose surface presentation is controlled, self-contained, not particularly available, who carries an energy of having been through things and having integrated those things into a kind of density that is visible? Someone around whom you might feel not in danger, but aware of a certain weight in their presence, a certain seriousness to how they occupy space. Because this reading is very specific in its direction, and I want to know how specifically it is landing for you, whether there is a face attached to the energy I am describing. You do not have to name them. Just tell me if someone came to mind. Let me speak about what your innocent face actually is, because the title names it, and I want to be precise about what I mean and what I do not mean. It is not innocence in the sense of inexperience or unawareness. You are neither of those things. You have lived things. You have understood things. You carry your own complexity and your own history and your own hard-won knowing. That is not the knowing of someone who has been kept from difficulty. What I mean by innocent face is something more specific. It is the quality of openness that persists in you despite everything you have been through that could have closed it. The fact that difficulty has not produced in you the reflexive guardedness that it produces in many people. That you still look at things directly. That your face, in unguarded moments, still shows what you actually feel in a way that has not been trained out of you by the accumulated wariness of too many disappointing encounters. That transparency is what this person cannot process. They have spent years in environments where everyone is managing their presentation, where faces show what is strategic to show rather than what is actually happening, where the gap between interior and exterior is wide and carefully maintained, and they have learned to operate in that environment, have become in some ways one of its most skilled navigators. And then there is your face, just showing what is there. With a directness that is so unfamiliar, it reads, to someone who has not encountered it in a long time, as almost radical, as something that requires a response different from the calculated responses they have available, something that calls for a matching directness that they have not had occasion to access in longer than they can clearly remember. You are making them remember something they had not thought about in a while, the possibility of being in the presence of someone they do not have to read between the lines of. I see a third image now, and it is the one that carries the full emotional weight of this reading. I see someone alone in the private space of their own interior, away from every context in which their hardness is relevant and necessary and the correct presentation of who they are. In the space where no one needs them to be what they have always been, and in this space, they are permitting themselves something they permit very rarely. They are imagining something good, not strategically, not as a plan to be executed, just imagining. The way you allow yourself to imagine things in the quiet moments when the defenses are not needed and the cost benefit analysis has been temporarily suspended, and the part of you that knows how to want things, the part that has been very carefully managed and not often given its full say, is allowed to speak. And what it is imagining is very simple. Something ordinary with you, not a grand gesture, not a dramatic culmination, something unremarkable, being in the same space as you without the performance of the hardness, having a conversation that moves in unexpected directions, the specific and ordinary miracle of being near someone who makes the interior temperature drop to something closer to what the actual interior temperature actually is, rather than the maintained temperature of someone who has spent a long time being what the room required. They are imagining rest with you. The dangerous person is imagining rest. And the fact that rest is what comes to mind when they think of you, the fact that your presence in their imagination produces not excitement exactly, though that is there too, but something quieter and deeper and more fundamental than excitement, says something about what they sense in you that may surprise you. They sense somewhere safe to put the armor down, not permanently, not in a way that abandons the armor forever, just somewhere they could set it beside the door for an hour and breathe without it and trust that the space was held by someone who would not use the unarmored version of them against them. You read as safe to a person who has not found many safe places. I want to say something to you now about how you receive this, because you have a tendency, Virgo, and it is a tendency born of genuine discernment rather than any flaw, to be careful about what you let matter to you, to take your time, to watch and assess and wait for the full picture before you allow something to fully land. And that tendency is wise and correct and has served you well. But I want to offer you this. The person I am describing in this reading is not asking you to lower your guard, not asking you to move before you are ready, not asking you to meet their softness with immediate and equal softness in a way that bypasses your own process. What they are doing is something much more quietly significant than that. They are becoming, in the private space of their own interior, a different version of themselves than anyone else has made them, without you even trying, without you even knowing. Simply by being who you are in their vicinity, by showing up with that particular quality of transparent, unhurried, entirely genuine presence that you carry, you have produced in a person who has not been soft in a very long time. The softest thoughts they have had in longer than they can remember. Your face did that, not your strategy, not your effort, not anything you constructed or curated or sent in their direction with intention, just your face, just you, exactly as you are. And if that does not tell you something about the specific and extraordinary nature of what you carry simply by existing in it fully, I am not sure what would. The dangerous person is thinking soft thoughts in the private room, in the unguarded hour, in the space between sleep and waking, when the armor is heavy and the imagination is honest, and the thing they actually want gets to exist without being immediately managed into something more appropriate. They are thinking of you gently, and that gentleness coming from where it is coming from means more than 1,000 soft thoughts from someone for whom softness was never a cost. Let it mean what it means.